For this lesson, we're going to be talking about the types of volcanoes. So you should be able to compare and contrast the types of volcanoes, the cinder, the shield, and the composite. Differentiate between a crater and a caldera. Describe volcanoes as either active, dormant, or extinct, and identify the locations of major zones of earthquake and volcanic activity, which we kind of touched on last lesson too. Okay, so types of volcanoes. Cinder cones. Cinder cones are made of cinders and other rock particles that have been blown into the air. They are explosive. They have explosive eruptions. They're loosely ranged, and they have a narrow base and steep sides. So this one doesn't look like it's steep, but comparing it to the next one we're going to look at, it's steeper than the other one. Okay, so an example would be Paracutin in Mexico. Shield volcanoes are quiet lava flows. They're runny lava that flows over a large area, so they're going to spread a lot further. So these are going to be a lot wider than they are tall. They have a gentle slope, and they are dome-shaped. So think about like Captain America's shield or something like that. But it's going to kind of be more thin, I guess you could say, or short. An example would be Mauna Loa in Hawaii. Composite volcanoes are going to have alternating layers of rock particles and lava. So you can see that it's not consistent. They can have violent eruptions at first that hurl like the volcanic bombs out, cinder and ashes, and then they can end up having a quiet eruption and then alternating eruptions. So these can vary between what they end up with from one point in the eruption to another, or from one eruption to another. Typically has a crater or caldera at the top. An example could include Mount Vesuvius, which is near Naples in Italy, and Mount Etna in Sicily, which is also in Italy. Volcano characteristics, so they can have a crater or a funnel-shaped pit or depression at the top. A caldera, like a cauldron, if the crater becomes large due to sides collapsing. So this would be more of a caldera because it's got the steep sides. But if it ends up being deeper. If it's just kind of a basic funnel shape. So these, it might be kind of hard to differentiate between a crater and a caldera. Caldera should be larger. Okay. Volcanic activity, it can be unpredictable. Earthquakes and eruptions are classified as active, which means that they have continual or periodical eruptions. In other words, you're expecting them to erupt. They're active. They're able to erupt. That doesn't mean they're erupting every day. But they can have long-term eruptions. They can have short eruptions, but they happen more frequently. Some of those include Lassen Peak in California, Mount St. Helens in Washington, and Mount Katmai in Alaska. Dormant are known to erupt in modern times, but is currently inactive, so they're not known for being eruptive at this point in time. Mount Rainier in Washington, Mount Hood in Oregon, and Mount Shasta in California. Notice these are all along the west coast for the most part. Extinct are not known to have erupted in modern history. Well, what's modern history? Modern history is probably within a couple generations of lifetime. So hasn't probably erupted in the last 100 to 200 years. Scientists consider truly extinct volcanoes those that have been worn away almost to the magma chamber. So in other words, like the mound that once formed, or the cone that once formed from the volcano, has worn away due to erosion and it has not erupted. Sometimes extinct volcanoes can be unpredictable. Lassen Peak and Mount St. Helens erupted suddenly after having a long period of inactivity. So there is some uncertainty with volcanic activity, even if we consider them dormant. And that's why we have so many mechanisms to measure activity to see if there's anything that could happen. Volcano and earthquake activity. Most of the major earthquakes and volcanic eruptions occur in 3 zones of the world. The Ring of Fire, which you watched the documentary on that. The Mediterranean zone, and the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Okay. The vault of the earth. So on August 24th, AD 79, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. This is probably one of the most well-known eruptions in history. Happened in Pompeii. Pompeii was covered with a layer of fine hot ash. Herculaneum was covered by a river of mud that contained pumice spewed from the volcano. The ash created casts of people trying to escape. Most people died from inhaling the hot ash and not having oxygen. So basically, they were asphyxiated. They did not have enough oxygen to survive. They suffocated. The ash preserved both civilizations. So as we have had archaeologists digging in those sites, they have found people, like casts of people where the ash went over the people, and it created a cast of them. So basically, if they unbury it, it looks like people. But it's also noted in, if you've seen the movie, the museum movie, they have the eruption in Pompeii in that as well. So that's it.